Welcome to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin. I'm so excited to feature the amazing Julie Ryan on this podcast episode. She's a fascinating woman who has immense psychic skills, which she wasn't born with and learned deliberately. And that means you can learn too. And she can teach you how. Psychic medium and medical intuitive Julie Ryan can sense what medical conditions and illnesses a person has and facilitate energetic healings. She can communicate with spirits both alive and dead. She is a buffet of consciousness and can scan animals, access people's past lives, and she can tell how close to death someone is. Her book, Angelic Attendants: What Really Happens When We Transition from This Life into the Next, describes a series of events that involves angels, multitudes of deceased family and friends, the spirits of deceased pets, and countless serendipitous and miraculous moments. Julie's Angel Messages books are picture books that have angels answering kids' tough questions. And each week, Julie scans callers on her Ask Julie Ryan show, which is heard in over 100 countries throughout the world. Julie's providing listeners with a free gift of her book, Angelic Attendant, so click the link in the notes and grab your copy. Before we dive into this episode, I want to invite you to explore the beautiful array of resources waiting for you at karagoodwin.com. From my book, Your Authentic Awakening, to powerful free meditations, there's something there to support you, no matter where you are on your spiritual path. You can also sign up for my upcoming Miracles Summit, where Julie Ryan will be a featured speaker. And you can connect with the like-hearted souls and expand your consciousness in real time with other offerings. And now enjoy this episode. Well, welcome, Julie. I'm so excited to have you on Soul Elevation. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, my honor. Thank you for having me.
This is going to be so much fun. I can't wait to just dive into all this woo stuff with you. And I know that you didn't start this way. And what I find fascinating is that you kind of develop these skills intentionally that you have, and you have these amazing skills. So let's talk about your background and how did you do that, and what made you want to do that?
Well, I'm a businesswoman and an inventor of surgical devices sold throughout the world who learned how to do woo-woo, and I'm a buffet of psychicness. That's what I tell people.
I love
I
it.
am not a psychic that had dead people chasing her since childhood. Or if I did, I wouldn't have known what to do with that. I didn't realize it. I learned how to do all of that and teach people all over the world how to do it as well. So from all walks of life, everybody can do this. Everybody has the ability. And how it came about was a little more than 30 years ago, a friend gave me a book called Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mace, who called herself a medical intuitive. And at that point, I'd been in the hospital supply industry for about 10 years and had really started my first company 5 years into that, and was trying to help people heal from the supply side through doctors and other medical providers. And so I'd never heard the term medical intuitive before, and I wanted to know more. And back then, Carol, we didn't have the internet yet. So I did the old-fashioned thing, and I went to a bookstore because I thought they're probably likely going to have more woo-woo stuff than my local library. And I found a book called Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan, who is a former NASA physicist. She's deceased now, who was a former NASA physicist, who parlayed very complex quantum physics principles into understandable English for the non-scientific mind. That would be me. And she was using energy to help people heal. And I was fascinated by that. So I called her school and I asked if anybody in my area was teaching this stuff. And lo and behold, they had a graduate who had just opened a school. And I studied with her for 6 years. She's still my mentor. I talk to her about once a month. She's in her 80s now, mid 80s.
Oh, wow.
And then parlayed that over 30 years into I teach everything in a weekend, and people learn how to do what I do. Really, they're doing it within the first hour or two of the weekend. It's really that simple.
Oh my goodness, that is fascinating, and I love that you bring up that the hands of healing because, it's on my coffee table right now. I'm not finished
Yeah.
with it, but it's in process, and it is so ahead of its time,
Right. And it
and
was
it's got
written
these.
probably 40 or 50 years ago.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's, got these amazing images
Mhm.
and practical tools about how to see your aura and see other people's energy.
Right.
So, you talk about you being a buffet of psychic skills. What's in the buffet? What's on offer? What have you learned?
Well, what I learned was that once we connect with spirit, we can do it all. In the woo-woo space, you got the psychics and the mediums and the pet psychics and the near-death experiencers and the past life regressionists. Once you connect with spirit, you can do it all. So that's the buffet. So I do a call-in show every Thursday night. People call in from all over the world. It's just a blast because I never know who's going to call. I never know what they're going to ask. I never know what spirit's going to say. And we can talk to your dead grandma. I can scan your cat. I can check your liver. I can, do past life thing. We can get advice from your angels and your spirit guides. It's just all the same thing. You just connect with spirit and then everything's available.
So, what is it like for you if you are scanning somebody energetically for medical insights? For example, with Barbara's book, she was clairvoyant, and maybe she probably had other skills too. But I feel like the book, or at least as much as I've read of it, it seems like it's very much clairvoyant, meaning psychic sight. Is that similar for you because it expresses itself in different ways for different people?
Well, what I teach is we want to use spirit communication in a way that's going to be easiest for you to decipher it because spirit communication is numerals, comes in numbers, and then our brains decode it. Similar to during World War II, the Allies had groups of people that decoded the Nazi communications and it helped them win the war because they knew what their plans were. Same kind of principle. Because if you think about it, numbers are the universal language. So if somebody's a visual learner, it's going to come in visually, maybe first, and then all the other senses are going to come into play. I'm a visual learner, so I see things visually. I also feel things, I hear things, I smell things, I know things. It's all part of the buffet of psychicness, and everybody has all the skills. Spirit's going to send the information numerically, and then our individual brain is going to decode it based on the easiest way that we learn. If as a visual learner, if I meet you at a party, I'm going to remember your face, but I'm not going to remember your name unless I see it, perhaps on a name tag.
Mm,
So,
that's
somebody,
fascinating.
yeah, somebody who's auditory will hear your name and they'll remember your name just from hearing it. So,
Right.
to answer your question, yes, I see things in my mind's eye. I'm like a human MRI. I
Mm.
connect with somebody with their permission always. And then I shoot energy into them. It takes me a nanosecond to turn my abilities on and off. And this is what I teach as well. If you want to meditate for an hour and twirl 3 times and raise your right hand and jump on your left foot, that's fine, but it's not necessary. Turn it on and off in a nanosecond. And then I'll watch a laser beam come from my body wherever I am, and it'll hook into the person that I'm scanning wherever they are. Even if they're in a galaxy far, far away, it doesn't matter. And then I'll envision shooting energy from their feet up through the top of their head. And it's as if I'm looking at an X ray or a CT scan or an MRI. So I can see in my mind's eye broken bones, torn ligaments, viral infections, bacterial infections, cancer or metastasized cancer or whatever. And then spirit works through me and with me to help that person heal. So as soon as something's identified, immediately an energetic healing will begin. And that can take the form of something getting added, something getting removed. I watch procedures in my mind's eye all the time that emulate what I saw in surgery for all those years when I was developing products, testing prototypes with my team and things like that. Sometimes I see healings that use methodologies and devices that haven't been invented yet.
Really?
Yeah, all the time.
Oh my gosh, that's
And
so
you may hear me say, "Oh,
fascinating.
cool. I haven't seen this before."
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of like it's in my bag of tricks, it's in
Mm.
my repertoire. And inevitably, somebody else will come along with something that I'll watch that healing. So the important thing to remember is nobody ever heals anybody else, ever. No doctor, no medical provider, no healer. I don't. We help the person heal themselves. If you think about you got a big cut on your leg and you go to the emergency room and the doctor stitches it up, well, the doctor doesn't make your skin grow back. You make your own skin grow back. The doctor's helping you heal your
Mhm.
body. And it's the same with this. The energy healing, I believe, is part of the healing equation. You got Western medicine, Eastern medicine, alternative medicine, chiropractic, naturopath, whatever. It's all pieces of the puzzle to help each individual person heal themselves.
Well, I love what you mentioned at the start of that with the numeric aspect of that. And I heard you talking about that in one of your own podcasts as well. And it sounds like you don't actually see the numbers coming in.
No.
It's translated in the way that your kind of makeup translates it is into images.
Yeah, my brain is decoding it into
Mhm,
images and senses and smells, and I get all the time, I call them divine downloads, it's direct knowing. I just know something
mhm,
and, can communicate with spirit. I'm hearing what spirit's saying. Let's say we're talking with a deceased loved one,
mhm,
and they're saying, "Does my mom have a message for me?" And that can come in words, it can come in images, it can come in feelings. All
mhm,
those different senses are all at play, and we all use them, and we all have the ability when we're born. We all come in with it.
mhm,
We all have had situations where we think of somebody and then they call us or they text us or they email us or we run into them and we say, "Oh my gosh, I was just thinking of you. What a coincidence." No coincidence there. That's your
yeah.
telepathic ability. And little children have their abilities very much on display until the adults in their life tell them, "Oh, honey, that's just your imagination. That's not really true. It's not really real." And then they learn to not trust it and shut it down. But spirit uses our imagination. That's one of the core components of spirit communication is imagination.
Yes. I love that, and I love that you bring up the synchronistic aspect to it
Right.
and how that's a divine communication in and of itself, and I will go ahead and share what I was telling you before we started recording because it was meaningful for me, when you and I started connecting about you coming on the podcast. I had received an email, and I can't remember the order, but I got because Sean Leonard has been a guest on my podcast, and so I had gotten an email from him that was promoting an event he was going to be participating in. And I look at, and there were other guest speakers, and I look, and you're on there. And then, and again, can't remember if I had just gotten the email from you or your team, or if it came right after that, but it was like in very short order.
Yeah.
And then I had a listener who I was connecting with. Kathy, hello, if you're watching, listening. And she was expressing some gratitude, which was so thoughtful of her. And she was like, my go to podcast these days, it's really just you and Julie Ryan. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm like scheduling her right now. It was just so profound. So I love that because I have a lot of, I mean, I know you do as well. Like there's just a lot of people in our
Right.
world. So when somebody's like showing up like that multiple times in these different contexts, it's so much fun.
I thought of my brother this morning, and within a second, he's calling me.
See?
Yeah.
It's so mysterious.
Right.
But it does show the way that I experience my strongest connection with divinity is through shapes, really, like geometry.
Mhm.
And so I draw a lot of sacred geometry. I see a lot of sacred geometry. If I'm going to see clairvoyantly, usually it's more geometric than like, a form. And when I think about synchronicities, I think about it in terms of like when you have a sacred geometry, you've got all these repeating fractals
Mhm.
that make up one shape.
Right.
And it's this repetition, and so when synchronicities come in, that's what it is. It's repeating. It's like showing you again and again. And so it's like for me this like living expression of a sacred geometry because it's got that repetition in it. But we all experience things, in our own way. That's kind of how I'm designed more, and it's harder for me to see things like clairvoyantly in the way that you talk about it. Feels like that's so much more direct and to the point.
Well, it'll come in eventually. It's been my experience with my students, and there's been hundreds of them from, I think,
Hmm.
15 countries so far, all walks of life. And what I teach is pay attention to how it comes in the easiest for you, and then the other ones are gonna come online the more you
Hmm.
do it. And I think where people get stuck is they say, "Well, I'm getting things, I'm hearing things, but I'm not seeing them." Okay, well, that's how spirit's communicating with you.
So I know you have a free gift for listeners, and it sounds like that the gift is related to what we're talking about. So please share what the gift is and how people can get it.
Angelic attendants, what really happens as we transition from this life into the next is what the title says. It's how we're all surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets. And there are illustrations in the book that talk about it. Everybody goes through the 12 phases of transition, whether they die instantly, like in the case of a homicide or suicide, or whether they die over a prolonged period of time, days, weeks, months, even years. And university based research shows that 90% of people at the end of their lives see the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets. 90%.
Wow.
So, this information is really helpful, not only to the person who's dying, but to the family members as well, because they're worried about what's going on. And when we're going through that with a loved one, certainly we all are facing our own mortality. And we're thinking, we're going to be there. I'm going to be there one day. What's going to happen? And people are so afraid, I think, of what can happen just from how we've been conditioned.
Right. Well, that's a beautiful offering. And has that insight come to you through experience with helping people to transition or from like your medium sessions?
Came with my mother. When my mother was
Oh,
dying in 2002, I'd been studying the woo-woo stuff for about, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years, something like that, and my mother was dying. It was very unexpectedly. I was in the room for about the last 24 hours of her life. She lives in Columbus, Ohio. We're in Birmingham, Alabama, so we drove through the night to get there, and I felt like the Lady of Justice statue, the balance, because on one side, my heart was breaking because my mother was dying. On the other side, I was seeing all this glorious stuff. And I thought, whoa, what is this stuff? So I saw the 12 phases. I saw her go through all those phases, and we can talk about that in a minute if you want. And then fast forward a few years, I was with my mentor, and she was doing a healing on me. And when she's doing a healing on me, all my deceased loved ones' spirits are on either side of the table. I'm on a massage table, and she's doing an energetic healing on me. And one day, this dead Pope showed up, and he had his Pope outfit on and his shepherd's rod and the whole 9 yards. And I said, "Well, who are you?" And Susan, my mentor, could see him too. And I said, "Well, who are you?" And he said, "I'm Clement." And I said, "I'm really sorry. I never heard of a Pope Clement." And I'm 12 years Catholic schools. I never heard of a Pope Clement. And he laughed and he said, "Well, I was number 6." I said, "Okay, how may I help you?" And he said, "You need to teach the world what happens when somebody dies, because it's been so bastardized over the millennia and people are afraid, and there's nothing to be afraid of. It's glorious. And you know that." And I said, "Well, thanks so much, but I'm a businesswoman and people will think I'm nuts. So I'm not interested, but thanks so much for stopping by." He said, "No, no, 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 no. Everything that you've done over your lifetime is to prepare you for this. So you just need to get on with it." Again, I said, "Thank you so much. I'm not interested." Fast forward, I'm in the car leaving from Susan's office, and I just looked him up just for kicks. Well, come to find out, this guy was in office during the Black Plague when 2/3 of Europe died, and he's best known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead. And I thought,
Wow.
all right, Ryan, you can't make that up. So a couple years go by and I'm in church sitting between my husband and my son. And the priest from the pulpit says, wouldn't it be nice if somebody could tell us if the angels and our loved ones really meet us and, lead us into paradise? And I'm getting elbowed from my husband and my son. And I'm saying, God, really? From the pulpit in the middle of church on Sunday morning? So I finally decided that, all right, all right, all right, all right, I'll do something with it. And that's when I wrote Angelic Attendants, and it's just bloomed from there.
Wow. So you gave us a little bit of a teaser with what happens in the process. Do you want to expand on that?
Sure, sure. Our spirit exits through the top of our head. Looks like a cartoon speech bubble where the cartoon character's thoughts or words are. And then there's the female spirit, the maternal spirit. If I was dying, my mother's deceased, it would be my mother. If she was still alive, it would be my grandmother. If she was still alive, it would be my great grandmother, always on the maternal line. They're the first spirit to show up, which surprised me. I thought, God certainly has a departure department in heaven and dispatches angels or something like to go help people die. I,
You're
I
like, can I reorg this?
Yeah, I just thought, "What? Really?" But I saw my grandmother there. So and she had just died 6 months prior to my mother.
Mm.
My, grandmother showed up, and then my mother's father's spirit showed up, and they were at, let's say, just for conversation's sake, somebody's in a bed when they're dying. My grandparents were at my mother's feet, and then this circle of angels formed with my grandparents anchoring it at my mother's feet. And these are big old angels, big wings, white gown, barefoot, rope belt. That's what I was taught they look like in Catholic school. Like the statuary and the paintings, the artwork. Is that what they really look like? Well, that's how they appear to me because I was taught they look like that. But somebody who grows up, let's say in an indigenous culture in the middle of the Amazon, they may see angel energy as just a blob of purple fog or something. Spirit's always going to show up in a way that we're going to be able to recognize who they are.
Mhm.
So as the person's getting closer to death, that circle of angels opens up into a horseshoe and then eventually is a straight line across the foot of the bed. And I call them angelic crowd control because during the other phases, there are thousands upon thousands of other spirits that come into the area. And I call them the Welcome to Heaven Committee. They're from all this person's lifetimes, and they're dressed in period dress, Renaissance dress, caveman dress, 1960s, go-go boots and mini skirts, whatever. And there's so many of them that they look like dots on the horizon. In the meantime, a couple of interesting nuances. About phase 6, there are 2 extra angels that show up on either side of the spirit bubble, what I call the spirit bubble. And about phase 9, between 9 and 10 Kara, their wings start to move. And it reminded me when I was watching it with my mother, it reminded me of an owl, a giant owl. Their wings are so fluid and they're silent, and you can almost feel the drag that they create if you've ever seen a documentary or a story about owls. So I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. I mean, I had no idea what was going to happen. And over a couple of hours with my mother, their movement started to form a vortex above her head,
Oh.
and it had an upward pull. It felt like it reminded me of driving through the car wash when they put the dryer on at the end and it's sucking all the water, off the
Mhm.
car. So it was something I could see, I could feel, I could hear. And I knew that in some way it was going to help her spirit evacuate. I believe that's what the NDEers talk about, going through a tunnel or sometimes a vortex. That's what they're experiencing.
Mm.
So in fact, that's what did happen. My mother's spirit separated from her body, went through the vortex, and then was escorted to heaven by the angels on either side of her of her spirit bubble, the wings.
Mhm.
Heaven looks like this plasma wall. really bright yellowish whitish. You go through it, no trace. You come back out, no trace. It was really interesting. Did you see the movie Contact with Jodie Foster way back
Yes.
when? Remember when she was on the other planet and she touched the air and it was plasma?
I kind of vaguely remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and her father, was the alien dressed as her father. Spirit's gonna show up in a way that we're gonna recognize them
Mhm.
and be comfortable with them. So there's that. And, so a couple of nuances that are interesting. First of all, when I was writing Angelic Attendants, my book, I thought, "I'm just gonna do some research on owl wings vortex, just see if there's something there." Obviously, I was led. And what I learned was there's this phenomenon called the wingtip vortex, which is an aeronautical engineering situation where anything that flies, whether it be a jet, a plane, a bird, a bug, a kite, whatever, vortices form from the air going over the wings and underneath the wings, and the vortices cause lift. So I thought, all right, this is pretty wild. Here are these angel wings causing this vortex, and it's helping my mother's spirit separate from her body and causes lift. It's kind of like a rocket shooting up, to
Mm.
detach. Another interesting thing is I always see the spirit go up and to the right, and I never knew why. I had no clue. So I was giving a talk one time, and this physicist professor came up to me afterwards and he said, "I know why the spirit goes up and to the right." And I said, "Really? Help me." And he said, "Well, think about when you're screwing on the lid of a jar, what do? When you're putting it on, you're screwing it clockwise. When you're taking it off, you're screwing it counterclockwise. So you come around to the left and it goes up to the right when you lift it off." So he said, "That makes total sense to me." And I said, "I love it when science catches up with woo-woo because woo-woo's been around a whole lot longer." Another interesting point, there's a prayer said at the end of every Roman Catholic funeral called In Paradisum, which translated from Latin means into paradise. And it talks about how your loved ones will be greeted by angels and deceased loved ones and led into paradise. And at my mother's funeral, I thought, whoa, I saw this like in a totally different way. I'd heard that prayer a bunch of times throughout my life, but it really had a new meaning for me. So again, I did some research and learned that that prayer originated as a 5th century Gregorian chant.
Oh.
Perhaps it took till the 5th century till somebody was well educated enough that they could read and write. And certainly some of the most learned people back then were men living in monasteries and synagogues. They were the scribes. So I have to believe that people have been able to see the 12 phases of transition since the beginning of time. And maybe it just took till the 5th century till somebody could write it down. But it's something that people have always known. The other thing that I think is interesting with all of this is the university-based research, as I mentioned, that all those spirits are there, and that 90% of people that are dying see the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets. So it validates, again, science is catching up with woo-woo. It validates all the stuff that I talk about in my book. And we used to think, well, grandma's just hallucinating from the morphine that hospice is giving her. No, grandma's actually seeing her deceased mother who died 60 years ago, and she can communicate with her. It's almost like we have one foot in the spirit world and one foot in our human world as we're dying. And another important thing is everybody goes through this regardless of how they die. Since time doesn't exist in the spirit world, time's a human creation. Somebody who dies instantly, like in the case of a homicide or suicide, goes through the 12 phases of transition. Somebody who dies over a prolonged period of time, days, weeks, months, even years, goes through it too. Everybody goes through the 12 phases of transition.
Wow. What fascinating insights. And it sounds like you've been able to experience this multiple times
Yeah.
beyond even with when you went through it with your mom.
Thousands, thousands. And so my parish, my Catholic church gives one of my books to every family that comes in to plan a funeral. There are many churches of all denominations all over the country that give a copy of my book. Their synagogues, I mean, hospice organizations give it to family members. And if you read the reviews on Amazon, I think there are over 500 of them. People talk about, oh my gosh, this was so comforting to my family and me. It helped me get through it. I had a client last week who told me this was the most touching thing anybody's ever said to me since I've been doing this work. Her twin sister passed. She was diagnosed with malignant melanoma and was dead in 2 months. So she said, we all read your book, including my sister. She said, we knew what to expect. We knew what was happening. And your sister just wanted to binge your show because it
Mm.
gave her comfort. And my client said, well, don't you want to listen to some music or something? She said, no, I just want to listen to Julie's show because it makes me know that there's way more to the story than meets the eye in this human form. And I thought, oh my goodness, what
Yeah.
a sweet thing for her to
Yeah.
tell me. And she said, I will never be able to thank you. And I said, honey, you just did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
the
beautiful.
stories are just endless of how
Yeah.
this helps people get through the transition process.
And from like, have you witnessed other transitions? You're like beyond
Thousands,
your mom.
thousands. Yeah.
You've witnessed them?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. Not
wow.
in person,
Uh-huh.
but I can connect with somebody anywhere in the world.
Right,
It
right, and
doesn't
so it's
matter.
the
Yeah,
process is consistent.
right, and anybody can do this, whether they've learned how to do woo-woo or not, because if you go to my website, askjulieryan.com, and you go to the 12 Phases of Transition page, there's a chart there with illustrations of all the different phases. Download it, save it on your phone, and if you're going through this with a loved one, just say, what phase is grandma in? You'll hear 7. You refer to the chart. It's on your phone. And then you know what's going on. You have a visual of how the angels and all the loved ones' spirits and pet spirits are there.
Mhm.
And then if you're seeing that grandma's going through phase 7, 8, 9 in rapid succession, then you know you need to bring the family in for those who
Wow.
want to say goodbye.
Well, what a huge gift for humanity and for listeners, so thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I think this stuff should be taught in the schools, which is
Yeah,
why I give away thousands of books every
yeah,
year. Yeah.
that's beautiful. So you talked about, the period dress
Yeah.
and how, thousands of people or beings, spirits are there kind of watching and that the angels are the what'd you call it, crowd control?
Yeah, angelic crowd control.
Yeah, and that makes me think about past lives.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
you kind of mentioned that it's everybody related to the one who's transitioning across time and space. So how how are people's past lives impacting this life? Why do you think that people from other lives would be interested in this life? Does that make sense? For the
You mean,
person
why are they
transitioning.
there to help welcome the person to heaven?
Right. And then also be even beyond the death process, how are previous lives impacting the current life?
Well, I think they all impact the current life because we come in because we wanna explore and experience things, and they're all a progression of what we've already explored. So, let's say you were a mass murderer in a past life. Let's just make it dramatic. I mean, what the heck, right? As an example. Let's say you're a mass murderer in a past life, and in this lifetime, you wanna come in as the one who's murdered because you wanna explore it from the different perspective. Or another lifetime, you come in as the mother of, the father of, the sibling of, the friend of, the spouse of, the child of, and we're looking at the same basic script from a different perspective. What I've been told a bazillion times from spirit is there's no right, there's no wrong in the spirit world. It's just an experience. And so we come in to look at things from a different perspective. An analogy I like to use for this is think of Hamlet. How many times has Hamlet been performed since Shakespeare wrote it in 1602? Who knows? But certainly same script, different perspective. When was it performed? Where? In what language? What was happening in the world at the time? What was the interpretation? Who were the actors? Who was the director? Who was the set designer? Was it inside? Was it outside? All the same script, same basic script, and we're exploring it from a different perspective. That's my take on how this works with past lives. There are lots of schools of thought too that we're living multiple lifetimes concurrently. And that makes my head want to explode because I can't even begin to fathom that. And yet I go to the place of, is it feasible? Yeah. Do I understand it from a human perspective? No. Will I when I get back to heaven? Absolutely. So I just say, okay, it's one of those mysteries. And
Yeah.
I'll understand it more when I'm back in pure spirit form.
Yeah, there are some things that this human mind has a really hard time being able to figure out the mechanics of how that could be possible.
And I don't think we're supposed to know everything because we're
Yeah,
supposed to be having the human experience.
right. And the veils are these really heavy veils are part of it.
Yeah,
But of course, you teach people how to thin their veils.
right.
So, is there anything that you can share here on how people can start to help to develop their senses?
Sure. When we know and think of our head as like a big satellite dish that receives and transmits frequencies, every spirit has a frequency they keep throughout all of their lifetimes. So, in order to get in touch with somebody's spirit, whether they're attached to a body or not is irrelevant. Whether you knew them or not is irrelevant. You just think of them. Who do you want to talk to? Your grandmother in heaven, Moses, Elvis, it doesn't matter. You just think of them. That connects your satellite dish head to their frequency instantly, and it opens up a two-way radio communication. And then you say something either aloud or in your head, and they're going to answer you. How you know it's them and coming from spirit is it's that first thing that comes into your head fast as you can snap your fingers or before. Because sometimes, remember, time doesn't exist in the spirit world. So oftentimes spirit will already have what you're saying and they'll be responding even before you'd finish thinking the thought. And that trips people up because they say, well, I didn't even finish my thought yet. Not matter. Time doesn't exist in the spirit world. So it's super easy. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And then it's just second nature.
Wow.
Spirit
Are
is always communicating with us. Always, always, always. It's whether or not we have our receiver head tuned to the spirit channel. I use the analogy of, obviously, I talk in analogies a lot to give us a human frame of reference. And I use the analogy of, let's say, the classical music station, the I Feel Good channels, are 104.7 is classical, or disco is 104.8. You can't listen to disco music and be in a bad mood. I grew up in the disco era. You can't, it's impossible. But when you're listening to the old fashioned country music station with the whiny, sad songs where somebody's howling about mama the truck and the dog, I call those the I feel crappy channels. Well, spirit doesn't communicate on the I feel crappy channels because the vibration's too low. Spirit's vibration's really high because they don't have the density of a body. So when you're tuned to the spirit channel, they can communicate with us. And how you know you're tuned to the spirit channel is you feel good. You don't have to be zippity doo dah daying around, but you feel good. You feel neutral at least, or you feel happy. And then spirit can communicate. Because it's kind of like if you have satellite TV and there's a storm blowing through and it messes up the satellite feed. Well, that TV show is still being broadcast. Your receiver just isn't able to pick it up. Furthermore, people who are in deep grief, I always recommend that they ask their loved ones to visit them in their dreams because our vibrational level resets to the level of spirit every night when we sleep. We go back to the factory preset level of spirit. And so it's easier for us to receive communication from spirit sometimes when we're sleeping. And how you know that it's a visit instead of just a dream is it's almost like it's in high def. The
Mm.
colors are more vibrant, the senses are crisper, you remember all of the details, all of that. That's a visit versus dreams are kind of murky, and oftentimes we don't remember all the nuances of them.
That's beautiful. Are there any nuances to do with the pet communication? Is it pretty much the same formula, or are there any kind of particulars when you're communicating with pets?
No, just think of them. That tunes your satellite dish head to their spirit. You communicate with them. Whether they're alive or deceased is irrelevant because you're
Mm.
connecting with their spirit.
Mhm. Oh, it's so fascinating. Well, Julie, this has been amazing. I've just loved every second of our discussion. Please tell people how they can connect with you and find out more.
AskJulieRyan.com. Everything's at Ask Julie Ryan. My shows, we release 4 shows a week. And we've got 5 YouTube channels in 5 languages at Ask
Wow.
Julie Ryan. We're on all the podcast networks at Ask Julie Ryan. Everything's at Ask Julie Ryan on the social media stuff. So AskJulieRyan.com. You can get to anywhere you want from there.
Beautiful. And then you have some training coming up, right? Where the people can join?
That's right. If you want to learn the buffet of psychicness, I do the training twice a year. And the in person training is October 24th through the 26th in Atlanta, Georgia. And I rent out a hotel that's adjacent to the airport. So it has free shuttle. That's the busiest airport in the world. You can get there from anywhere. And it's just a blast. You learn to do everything within a weekend. It's so much fun. It is so much fun that I have dozens of volunteers who are graduates that come in on their own dime to participate to help the new students. So anybody that's interested, askjulieryan.com. You'll see it. And it's called Angelic Attendant Training in Atlanta, October 24th through the 26th. Come join us.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here. And it's just been such a joy.
My honor. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Soul Elevation. If someone in your life would be inspired or uplifted by what you heard today, please take a moment to share it with them. These are the kinds of conversations that ripple out and elevate collective consciousness. And if you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the powerful episodes ahead. Your presence, your energy, and your support truly help amplify this mission of raising frequency and anchoring in a more awakened humanity. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you for the next episode of Soul Elevation.